I used to think the stars were silent. They looked peaceful from the ground, tiny sparks scattered across a velvet sky. But after 15 years of working in orbital maintenance, I've learned they never shut up. Every one of them hums on a different frequency, like 1,000 power converters whispering to each other across the dark. My name's Ryan Corin, Certified Atmospheric Engineer, Outer Rim License 72218. If you've never been to the Rim, imagine a scrapyard that someone tried to terraform into a home and then got bored halfway through. We don't get parades of starliners here, no luxury domes, no shimmering weather nets. We get leaky oxygen plants, crooked landing pads, and people who fix things because no one else will. I live on Erebos 6, one of the last habitable worlds before the spiral arms dissolve into open void. My wife Mara runs a local nutrient shop, trading imported synth grains for whatever the miners bring in from the rings. Our daughter Lyra is 8, bright, endlessly curious, and already smarter than me. And there's Kip, our dog. Technically, he's a Gen Husk Terrier hybrid, engineered to sniff out chemical leaks, but he mostly spends his days stealing Lyra's socks and barking at cargo drones. Life isn't glamorous, but it's steady. I do maintenance runs for the Frontier Atmospheric Consortium, traveling between nearby colonies to patch stabilizers and recalibrate biofilters. Most systems pay in resource credits, some in food or spare parts. All of it goes into a fund labeled Inner Move, our ticket to the inner circles where civilization hums under gold domes and artificial skies. One day, Mara and I tell ourselves, one day Lyra will breathe filtered air that doesn't taste like rust. That day always feels just one job away. The message that started everything came through my holocom just before dawn. I was on the roof, checking the oxygen scrubber while Kip chased a vapor moth. The sky was the color of dull brass. Erebos mornings always looked polluted, even when they weren't. Incoming contract, priority level 3, planetary maintenance emergency. System, Varela 9. Client, Local Council of Faynad Settlements. Compensation, 18,000 credits plus travel and hazard pay. Status, awaiting engineer confirmation. 18,000. That was 6 months of income in one run. The catch was the hazard line. There's always a catch. I called Mara from the comm. Her image flickered up half asleep, hair tangled, eyes sharp anyway. Don't say yes before breakfast, she warned.
Didn't even open the file yet, I lied. She yawned. Rin, you said that last time. You came back with a broken drone and a lung full of spore dust. Yeah, but I fixed their stabilizer. She rolled her eyes. Read the hazard section first. I did. Incident cause, local fauna interference, primary atmospheric nodes damaged by indigenous creatures, multiple fatalities among previous maintenance crew. I whistled. So, angry wildlife? Mara folded her arms. How angry? Probably medium angry, maybe large. Rian, it's 18,000. She sighed, the long kind that means she's already lost the argument. At least take help this time. By midday, I was aboard a shuttle bound for Virila 9, a neighboring agri-planet known for purple wheat and acid rains. I shared the cabin with 2 other contractors, a Krellian mechanic named Tesk, 6 eyes, too many teeth, and a silent Dravari logistics officer wrapped in translucent robes. We didn't talk much, long haulers rarely do. Through the viewport, the stars smeared into silver lines as the shuttle's drive engaged. I felt that familiar tug of anticipation mixed with guilt. Every job meant leaving Mara and Lyra behind, promising them it was the last dangerous one. Every time, I convinced myself it was true. Varela 9 looked beautiful from orbit, a blue-green sphere with swirling cloud ribbons and vast stretches of farmland. Up close, it was a mess. The landing pads were scarred, and most of the buildings had protective domes stained yellow by chemical rain. The air smelled faintly of vinegar and ozone. A Fainted officer met us at the dock. Faintids are tall, insectoid beings with iridescent carapaces and soft voices that click at the edges of sentences. This one introduced herself as Commander Ishtara. "You are the atmospheric specialist from Erevos?" she asked, extending a three-fingered hand. "Riancoran, yes. This is Kip." Kip wagged his tail once, then sneezed from the smell. Ishtara tilted her head. "The animal is part of your equipment?" "Morale support," I said.
The conference room looked improvised. Maps projected onto cracked walls, air humid with chemical residue. Ishtara pointed to a 3D model of the planet. 3 days ago, atmospheric stabilizers in the northern hemisphere began failing sequentially. Crop yields dropped by 40%. Our teams dispatched to investigate were attacked by the native fauna, the Groth. They are burrowing creatures drawn to vibration and energy emissions. Their size, she paused, varies. "How much variance?" I asked. "The smallest is the size of your animal. The largest consumes crawler vehicles." I nodded slowly. "Right. And you want me to go there?" "You and a small escort," she said. "Payment is doubled for success. The Council has approved long-term maintenance contracts if we can restore stability." Long-term. That phrase caught my attention. If I played this right, it could be the steady job I dreamed of. "I'll need a team of local techs," I said, "and military support. I don't fix things under things that eat me." Ishtara's mandibles clicked again. Definitely laughter this time. "Approved. You depart tomorrow." That night, I stayed in a workers' dome near the court. The rain drummed softly on the roof, turning the translucent panels into liquid mirrors. I watched lightning roll across the fields and sent a message home. "Hey Mara, made it safe. Rain smells like salad dressing. Locals have bug faces but decent sense of humor. Love you. Tell Lyra to feed Kip's backup battery." Her reply came a few minutes later. "You always say the air smells weird. Don't die. Love you too." I smiled, then lay back and let the steady pulse of the storm lull me to sleep. The next morning, the transport convoy assembled. 2 crawler vehicles, each the size of a small house, plated with reactive armor. My escort consisted of 4 fainted soldiers and 1 human sergeant, Cal Reese, a grizzled veteran who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Engineer Corin," he greeted. "Heard you're the genius who volunteered for this suicide run." "I prefer optimistic contractor." He snorted. "We move in 10. Keep your tools close and your head lower." As we rolled out across the flooded plains, I studied the horizon. Tall, fungal trees swayed under dark clouds. The soil shimmered faintly from trace toxins. Somewhere beneath that surface, the Groth burrowed, waiting. The stabilizer tower rose in the distance, a spindly structure half collapsed, surrounded by scorched ground. Sensors flickered across my wrist pad. Erratic energy spikes, unstable air chemistry, radiation within tolerable limits. "Tesk, you're reading this?" I radioed to the mechanic riding in the rear crawler. The Krillian voice buzzed through. "Yes, something is draining the power cells, like a pulse every few minutes. Not natural." "Maybe they're chewing on the conduits," I muttered. Reese overheard. "If they're that smart, I'm going home."
We stopped 100 meters from the tower. Steam hissed from vents as the crawlers powered down. The soldiers spread out in a defensive arc, weapons scanning the mud. I stepped out, boots sinking into wet soil, and took my first real breath of Virella air. It burned slightly, too much carbon compound, but breathable. "All right," I said to Kip, who trotted beside me wearing his little sensor harness. "Let's earn that hazard pay." The tower's base was shredded. Thick cables hung like entrails, metal gnawed and twisted. I knelt, scanning the damage. Deep gouges, irregular patterns, residue of organic acid. Definitely animal activity. I patched a diagnostic drone into the main conduit. The holo display lit up, showing the stabilizer core flickering on the edge of failure. "Good news," I said over comms. "It's not dead. Bad news, it's screaming." Reese's voice came back. "Meaning?" "Meaning, if we don't stabilize it, this entire hemisphere's atmosphere goes sour in 2 weeks. The fainted soldiers clicked nervously. I pretended to sound confident. "I can fix it. Just need to reroute power through the auxiliary grid. Keep the area secure." 2 hours later, the sky darkened again. Lightning licked the clouds, turning them purple. Kip's sensors beeped, movement underground. "Contact!" Reese shouted. The ground bulged 10 meters away, then erupted. A groth surged out, massive, armored like a centipede with translucent plates glowing from within. It shrieked, a sound halfway between steam release and thunder. "Open fire!" Reese barked. Blue plasma bolts tore through the rain. The creature recoiled, then lunged toward the noise, crushing a drone under its bulk. I dove behind a conduit, heart hammering. Kip barked once, then darted behind me. Chunks of mud splattered as the soldiers kept firing, finally forcing the beast to retreat into the ground. Silence followed, except for the rain. Reese looked at me. "Still think this was worth it?" I exhaled. 18,000 credits says yes.
When the storm cleared, I finished patching the power grid. The stabilizer's hum deepened into a steady rhythm, a heartbeat returning to life. Vapor streamed upward, dispersing the toxins. "System stable," I announced. Ishtara's voice came through the comlink from base. "Impressive work, Engineer Korin. Return for debrief. The Council wishes to speak with you personally." "Personally?" I asked. "Personally," she confirmed. Reese clapped my shoulder. "Guess you're famous now, genius." I grinned. "Fame doesn't pay rent, but maybe it buys dinner." Back at the Capitol Dome, the council chamber looked far grander than the port. Feynman elders stood on raised platforms, their carapaces painted with shimmering pigments. Ishtara translated for them, her voice calm and formal. "Engineer Korin, the Council expresses gratitude for restoring the Northern Stabilizer. Your skill prevented ecological collapse." "Glad to help," I said, trying not to stare at the glowing patterns shifting on their shells. "One more matter," Ishtara continued. "The Council offers you a permanent position as Planetary Atmospheric Chief. Housing, full compensation, and relocation benefits for your family." I blanked. "Permanent? As in, stay here?" "Yes. The previous engineer perished. We require someone dependable." 18,000 credits suddenly felt small compared to a lifetime of security. Mara would never have to worry again. Lyra could attend proper schools. But when I looked through the dome's glass ceiling at the storm-scarred sky, a strange feeling crept in, half relief, half weight. I'd spent my life chasing a better home. Maybe it had just caught me instead. I didn't say yes right away, mostly because my mouth had gone dry and I didn't trust my voice not to squeak. Permanent position, housing, family relocation. Those words rattled around my skull like loose bolts. Ishtara waited patiently, multifaceted eyes reflecting the dome's dim light. At last I managed, "Can I think about it?" "Of course," she said. "But do not think too long. The storms are coming back." That night I walked the perimeter of the Capitol Dome, rain hissing against the transparent plating. The city glowed faintly from the bioluminescent moss that clung to every surface, green and gold veins of light in the dark. It was beautiful in a strange, industrial way. Still, all I could think about was Mara and Lyra back on Erebos, breathing rust-tinted air, waiting for my next paycheck. When I called home, Mara appeared on the holopad wearing her shop apron, flour on her face. She looked tired, but happy to see me. Lyra leaned in from the side, waving one of Kip's mechanical ears. "Hey, hero. Finished saving another world?" "Mostly," I said. "They offered me a job, permanent one, planetary chief." Silence. Then, "Permanent?" "Yeah, good pay, safe housing. They'd relocate you here, real schools for Lyra, open markets, clean water." Mara's eyes softened. "Clean water?" "Mostly clean," I admitted. "Maybe lightly acidic." Lyra giggled. "Can we swim in it?" "Not without armor," I said. "Still, it's a start." Mara bit her lip. "You really think this place could be home?" I looked through the glass at the storm rolling over the plains. "I don't know, but it's the first planet that needs me for more than a quick fix." She nodded slowly. "Then maybe it's worth a try." 2 weeks later, they arrived. The shuttle came down through golden clouds, engines trailing steam. Kip barked like he could smell them from orbit. Lyra burst out first, wearing goggles far too big for her face. She spun in a circle, staring at the glowing moss and the distant fungal trees. "It's like living inside a jellyfish," she squealed. Mara stepped down behind her, eyes scanning everything like she was cataloging potential disasters. Typical Mara, part wonder, part logistics. I hugged them both so hard Lyra squeaked. Kip ran figure eights around our legs until he slipped in the mud. For the first time in years, the idea of home felt like something you could actually touch. Our assigned quarters were inside Sector 12, a residential dome for planetary staff. Small but dry. Air filters hummed quietly. The walls smelled faintly of citrus from imported cleaning nanites. Mara set up her nutrient mixer in the corner. Lyra claimed the top bunk and immediately plastered the window with drawings of glowing trees. That evening, we ate real food. Fresh grain, fried algae, something that might have been chicken if you squinted. Outside, lightning flashed across the sky, and for once, it didn't feel threatening. My new duties were less heroic and more endless paperwork. Verona's atmospheric grid had 63 stabilizer towers, half of them older than the colony itself. Each one needed calibration, maintenance, and sometimes exorcism, if you counted the growth infestations. I had a small team. Tesk, the Corellian mechanic from my first mission. Rees, now officially my field security officer, and 2 local fainted techs, Isha and Kel, who communicated in polite half-sentences. Together, we looked like the galaxy's least intimidating repair squad. The first few months went smoothly. We fixed towers, trained locals, chased small growth away with sonic repellents. Lyra started school inside the dome and learned faster than her teachers. Mara opened a tiny cafe that sold Terran-style pastries. Turns out, even insectoids love coffee. For a while, life almost felt normal. Then the readings started to drift. Tiny anomalies at first, CO2 ratios creeping upward, trace toxins returning to the air. Atmospheric stabilizers didn't fail quietly. They complained in slow, dying whispers. I ran diagnostics twice, then 3 times. The results were the same. Something underground was releasing gases faster than the towers could neutralize them. Not mechanical failure, organic interference. I scheduled a field inspection. Mara frowned when I told her. "You just finished 6 months of peace," she said. "Maybe let someone else check the creepy gas monsters." "It's not monsters. It's probably microbial bloom from decomposed biomass."
Translation, monsters you can't see. I kissed her forehead. I'll be back before Lyra's bedtime. You always say that, she muttered.
We took a crawler out past the city limits. The plains shimmered under weak sunlight, the soil damp from recent rain. At a distance, stabilizer number 14 poked through the fog like a lonely antenna. Tesk checked his scanner. Gas composition irregular. Methane sulfide mix. Not natural ratio. Any seismic readings? I asked. Minor. Something moving underground again. Reese grumbled. Growth nest, maybe. Thought we cleared this sector. We reached the tower and set up a perimeter. Kip trotted ahead, sensors glowing blue. He sniffed around the base and growled softly. The structure looked intact, but the surrounding soil pulsed faintly, like breathing. That was new. I knelt, took a sample, and watched it fizz inside the test vial. Tiny bioluminescent threads danced in the fluid. Great, I muttered. The dirt's alive. Tesk leaned closer. Maybe symbiotic growth, feeding on tower energy. Or feeding on us, Reese unslung his rifle. Relax, I said. Let's just isolate a sample and... The ground shifted beneath us. A crack split open, spewing green mist. Kip barked, alarm screamed. I barely had time to grab the nearest rail before the soil collapsed, swallowing half our equipment. When the dust cleared, a dark cavity yawned at our feet, tunnels lined with glowing slime. Tess clicked his mandibles nervously. Not natural formation. No kidding, Reese said. I lowered a probe into the hole. It barely went 10 meters before the signal cut out. Whatever was down there, it was alive and interfering with the stabilizer network. Back at headquarters, Ishtara listened to our report with her usual calm. She said, "We will dispatch a military survey. Until then, seal this site." "Commander, if the emissions continue, we'll lose half the northern sector's crops within a month," I warned. She tilted her head. "Then you suggest direct investigation?" "I do, with proper gear and a smaller team. Minimal vibration, so we don't attract anything." She considered this. "You are persistent, Engineer Corin." "I'm paid to be annoying." Her mandibles clicked softly. "Very well. You may have limited clearance. Do not die. It creates paperwork."
That night, Mara wasn't thrilled. "You're going into a glowing hole full of mutant worms?" she asked. "Technically, bioluminescent subsoil organisms." Reese, "Okay, fine, mutant worms." Lyra looked up from her homework. "Can I come?" "Absolutely not," we said in unison. She pouted. "Then at least take Kip." I smiled. "Always do." We returned at dawn, loaded with sensors, masks, and enough repellents to fumigate a continent. Reese went first, rappelling down with practiced ease. The tunnel walls shimmered with veins of green light, warm to the touch. The deeper we went, the more I realized we weren't in random burrows. The tunnels curved in geometric patterns, connecting nodes like circuitry. Nature doesn't build perfect hexagons. At the lowest chamber, we found what looked like a massive cocoon fused into the rock, pulsing faintly. Energy readings spiked every few seconds. Tesk scanned it and chirped an alarm. "Bioelectrical field, feeding off the tower output through the ground." "So the growth built a living power grid?" Reese asked. "Or something older is using them," I said quietly. The cocoon twitched, releasing a hiss of vapor that smelled like ozone and rot. "Okay, team," I said, stepping back. "New plan. We leave, we seal, and we never speak of this again." No one argued. Back at base, I compiled the data into a report for Ishtara. Her expression barely changed as she read. This structure beneath the surface, you believe it is artificial. Organic tech, probably ancient, and it's feeding on the stabilizers. If we keep pumping energy, we might wake it up. She tapped her claws together thoughtfully. The Council will not authorize shutdown. Our harvest season depends on stable weather. So we choose crops over survival? We choose pragmatism. I clenched my jaw. Pragmatism was the polite word for ignore the engineer until it explodes. That evening, I told Mara everything. She listened quietly, stirring a pot of soup that smelled like seaweed and nostalgia. When I finished, she said, "You can't fix everything, Reese. I have to try." She sighed. "You're going to anyway, so at least promise me you'll come back before the next storm." "I promise." Kit barked once, as if sealing the deal.
3 days later, the anomalies doubled. 2 towers went offline within hours of each other. The Council ordered emergency recalibration. I ordered caffeine. We split into teams. Tesk and Kel north, Rise and I south. Our crawler plowed through fields of purple wheat, now fading to gray. Halfway there, sensors picked up seismic tremors. Rise glanced at me. "Tell me that's normal." "Define normal." The ground rippled. A fracture line raced toward us, glowing beneath the soil. Before we could react, the crawler lurched sideways, half submerged in mud. "Out!" Rise shouted. We scrambled clear as the earth collapsed again, revealing another vast chamber. Through the dust, I saw movement. Hundreds of groth, smaller ones this time, swarming like veins around a single glowing core. They weren't random animals. They were extensions of something else, protecting it, maintaining it. The realization hit like a falling stabilizer. Varela wasn't sick. It was alive. And we've been feeding it energy for years. We barely made it back before the storm hit. Lightning struck the horizon, igniting clouds into electric webs. The city's shield domes flickered, struggling to stay coherent. Inside headquarters, alarms blared across every console. Ishtara met us at the entrance, her carapace dimming with stress. "Engineer Corin, what have you done?" Nothing yet, but if we don't shut down the grid, the planet's going to eat it." "Unverified speculation. Then verify it fast." She stared at the screen, showing power surges crawling across the network like veins of fire. Finally, she whispered, "Do what you must." Reese and I raced to the control core. Manual override, emergency dampers, power reroute, it all blurred together. My hands shook as I keyed in commands. The stabilizer hums rose to a scream, then faded as the system powered down. For a moment, everything went silent, eerily still. Then, the planet exhaled. A wave of pressure rolled through the dome, rattling every panel. Outside, lightning arced upward instead of down, splitting the sky into fractal patterns. The ground stopped shaking. The reading stabilized, and just like that, the storm was gone.
When I stumbled outside, the air smelled clean. Not perfect, not sterile, just clean. The clouds thinned, revealing a pale blue sky. For the first time since I'd landed on Varela 9, sunlight touched my face without tasting like metal. Mara and Lyra waited near the dome entrance, faces lit by the fading glow. Lyra ran toward me, Kip bounding beside her. "You did it!" she shouted. "Maybe," I said, hugging her. "But I think the planet did it for us." For 3 days after the storm, the air over Varela tasted like wet metal and sunlight. Every dome window I passed was fogged with condensation that smelled faintly of ozone, an odd perfume of renewal. The weather grid was silent, no sirens, no red beacons. Only the hum of filters and the lazy buzz of repair drones patching what the lightning had cooked.
I hadn't realized how used to noise I'd become until it stopped. Silence on a living world can feel heavy, like the planet is holding its breath. Commander Ishtara called it a stabilization lull. I called it a miracle that didn't want credit. We spent those days doing old-fashioned work, hand checks, manual readouts, climbing towers instead of trusting remote sensors. Tesk's 6 eyes blinked independently while he crawled along a conduit like a spider, whistling static tunes through his respirator. Reese kept a rifle slung even though nothing moved out there except wind and spores. Aisha and Kel charted emission ratios and argued about decimal places in polite feinted clicks. The numbers said the same thing each night. The air was cleaning itself faster than our systems could explain. Something underground, maybe that vast bio-network we'd disturbed, was pulling the excess toxins down and locking them into mineral veins. Nature improvising. When I finally took a day off, Mara insisted we walk outside the dome. Not far, just to the ridge overlooking the wheat fields that had started to regrow, pale green against black soil. Lyra ran ahead, Kip bounding beside her, chasing glitter flies that flashed like sparks in the thin sun. Mara slipped her hand into mine. "Feels different." "Yeah, lighter. You think it's safe now?" "Safer than it's been." I hesitated. "But I don't know if it's stable. The planet's doing half the work for us. I just don't understand how." She smiled sideways. "Maybe you don't need to. Maybe let it breathe." Easy for her to say. Engineers don't rest until the math stops twitching. That evening, I logged the latest field readings. Baseline oxygen up 4%. Toxin levels down 6. All good news, except the data came with strange harmonics buried in the signal. Faint pulses that didn't match any tower frequency. At first, I thought it was static from lightning residue. Then I noticed the intervals were too precise, spaced exactly every 22 seconds, like a heartbeat measured by a machine that didn't know it was alive. I ran a quick spectral analysis. The pattern mapped to geological nodes, not our transmitters. If the planet had a circulatory system, this was it. Moving air and energy beneath the crust in timed surges. I saved the file under a boring name so the Council's scanners wouldn't flag it. Routine Geosync Log 44. No need to start another panic. That night the rain returned, gentle this time. I lay awake listening to it tap the dome. Mara breathed softly beside me, and Kip's servo tail ticked against the floor like a metronome. Through the glass I watched faint blue flickers roll under the clouds, silent lightning deep inside the atmosphere. Maybe that was the planet version of dreaming. For the first time since leaving Erebos, I didn't picture moving anywhere else. By the next rotation, I couldn't ignore the numbers. Every stabilizer was performing a few percentage points better than our settings allowed. It was as if someone, or something, had tuned them after us. I brought the anomaly up at morning briefing. Tesk's mandibles clicked through a laugh that sounded like gravel in a blender. "Engineer Corin, perhaps you finally built self-healing machines." "I'd love to take credit, but these towers aren't that smart." Kel tilted her head. "Could be resonance feedback from subterranean pockets." "Except the feedback is synchronized across 1,000 kilometers. That's not feedback, that's coordination." Reese poured more synthetic coffee into his cup. "If the planet wants to do our job, I say let it, cheaper on payroll." Aisha gave a slow fainted blink, the equivalent of an eye roll. "Until it decides we're inefficient." We laughed, but not comfortably.
I spent the afternoon in the field lab, surrounded by monitors humming like an orchestra of bees. When I overlaid the harmonic pulses from each tower, a pattern unfolded.
a slow spiral originating from the same region where we'd found the cocoon months ago. Each pulse carried a slight variance in frequency, almost like a call and response between towers. The planet was talking to itself. Kip sat beside my chair, sensors blinking amber as if he sensed my unease. "All right, partner," I said, rubbing his metal ear. "Either we've invented atmospheric jazz or Varela's running its own calibration routine." He wagged his tail once. Optimistic interpretation chosen. At sunset, I went topside with a portable scanner the size of a lunchbox and a stubborn curiosity. The fields glowed faintly under the twin moons, one silver, one the color of copper. Lightning spiders danced on the horizon, silent threads stitching sky to soil. I planted the scanner's probes into the ground. Within seconds, it displayed those same rhythmic surges, but stronger here, almost like standing above a buried engine. The soil vibrated faintly through my boots, a subtle hum that resonated in my chest cavity. "Okay," I murmured, "show me what you're doing." The pulses changed tempo, speeding up, then slowing again, as if responding to my voice or the vibration of the probe. Not communication, I told myself. Reflex, feedback loop. Still, goosebumps prickled my arms. The next day, I took the data to Ishtara. She listened with her usual unflappable calm while I projected the spiral map. She noted, "This activity coincides with improved air quality." "Exactly," I said. "It's stabilizing itself. We're passengers now." "Then you recommend observation only?" "For now, we stop forcing adjustments and watch what it does unaided." Ishtara folded her arms. "The Council will ask if the organism poses risk. It hasn't harmed us yet. It's reacting to environmental stress, not aggression." She clicked softly. "Perhaps Varela is simply defending its ecosystem." "Exactly. Self-preservation." Her antenna twitched, and what I'd learned was approval. "Continue monitoring, Engineer Corrin, quietly. The Council dislikes phenomena it cannot tax."
Weeks passed. The pattern strengthened, settling into a slow, steady rhythm that matched the planet's day-night cycle. Weather grew predictable, mild. The wheat fields turned a healthy gold for the first time in decades. People laughed more in the streets. Markets filled again. Mara's Cafe added outdoor seating under filtration domes. One evening, she handed me a mug of steaming brew and nodded at the clear sky. "You realize the forecast has been perfect for a month. You're sure you're still needed?" I smiled. "If everything keeps working, that means I finally did my job." She smirked. "So success equals unemployment." "Exactly." Lyra, sitting on the steps with Kip, pointed at drifting clouds. "Look, Dad, they move like waves." And they did, rolling, gentle, patterned with faint green shimmer where atmospheric particles reflected the twin moons. I wanted to believe it was coincidence, but deep down I felt the same hum I'd sensed in the fields, steady and protective. Later, back in the lab, Task wandered in, munching on something that hissed faintly, probably edible by his standards. "You're still chasing your phantom heartbeat?" he asked. "Heartbeat implies intent. This is metabolism." He leaned over my shoulder, 6 eyes blinking in relay. "Whatever you call it, it is keeping the crops alive. Maybe you should thank it." I chuckled. "I'd write a thank you note if I knew where to mail it." "Underground, perhaps." His joke landed heavier than he meant. Somewhere below, that immense organic network pulsed on, unseen and tireless, like veins under skin. When I finally shut down the monitors and stepped outside, the air felt alive against my skin. Clean, slightly charged, carrying the scent of wet stone. For the first time, I didn't feel like an intruder patching leaks. I felt like part of the system. Maybe that's all home ever was, a feedback loop that accepts you.
By the time the council declared the Virella Restoration Initiative officially complete, the entire Capitol dome smelled of baked grain and oil paint. Merchants were repainting signs, children were chalking stars onto the streets, and even the fainted guards had polished their carapaces to mirror shine. For once, no one talked about evacuation plans or food rationing. Mara stood at the cafe window, watching the crowd spill through the plaza. "They're actually smiling," she said, disbelief soft in her voice. "Maybe they finally believe the air's not going to kill them." I sipped her latest experiment, a mix of coffee and some nutty local root that tasted like courage with a hint of soil. "Guess the universe occasionally rewards good behavior," she laughed, "or dumb luck." That night, the city threw its first festival in decades. Strings of bioluminescent vines hung from the domes, glowing soft amber. Bands played hybrid instruments, half organic, half electric, that made the air vibrate pleasantly in your bones. Lyra dragged me into the crowd, Kip trotting ahead with a tiny garland around his collar. I tried dancing, failed spectacularly, and pretended it was intentional comic relief. Mara clapped along, shaking her head. Reese raised a drink from across the plaza in mock salute. Tesk was already surrounded by fascinated locals, demonstrating how Krellians could harmonize by vibrating their thoraxes. Even Ishtara appeared for a moment on a raised platform, regal and faintly amused. For the first time, Virella didn't feel like a contract. It felt like community. The next morning, the calm held. No seismic tremors, no atmospheric spikes, no storms building on the radar. Just a mild breeze carrying the smell of wet grain. I took Lyra out to the western ridge, the one where we'd first watched the field turn green again. Kip ran ahead, leaping through low fog that clung to the grass. Lyra crouched, poking at the soil with a stick. "Look, Dad, tiny lights." Sure enough, faint bioluminescent threads wove through the topsoil like glittering roots. I took a reading with my wrist scanner. Energy output, minimal, steady, harmless. "The planet's still breathing," I said. She wrinkled her nose. "Plants don't breathe." "This one sort of does." She nodded solemnly, satisfied with that answer only children could accept. "Can we stay here forever?" The question hit harder than it should have. I looked out across the plain, dome shining in the distance, clouds stacked high like slow-moving continents. The wind shifted, carrying warmth instead of dust. "Yeah," I said finally. "I think we can."
Back in the lab later that week, I compiled months of data into one last report. Atmospheric index stable. No further toxin emissions. Subsurface bionetwork active but non-aggressive. Projected sustainability indefinite. I attached a simple conclusion. The system has achieved equilibrium through mutual adaptation between artificial stabilizers and native biosphere. Translation: the planet learned to live with us, and we learned to stop breaking it. When I hit send, I felt lighter than I had in years. That evening, I met Reese on the balcony of the security tower. He'd swapped his armor for civilian clothes and looked strangely smaller without it. "Hard to believe," he said, nodding at the horizon. "A whole planet quiet for once. Maybe it finally ran out of things to complain about." He chuckled. "So what now, Chief Engineer? Still dreaming of the inner circle? I shook my head. Nah, turns out the center of the galaxy's overrated. Everything interesting happens on the edges. He raised his bottle to a toast. To the edges, then. We drank to that. Synthetic ale, slightly sour, perfectly fitting. Later, lying in bed, I listened to the low hum of the atmospheric grid, blending with the faint, natural rhythm beneath it, the planet's own pulse. Two systems, one mechanical, one organic, moving in sync. If there was intelligence there, it wasn't the kind that spoke or dreamed. It was the simple will to survive, to balance, to keep breathing. Maybe that was enough. Mara stirred beside me. You're thinking again. Occupational hazard. About what? How something that big can learn to live with us. She smiled in the dark. Maybe it just decided we weren't worth the trouble. I laughed quietly. That too. Outside, faint auroras rippled along the horizon, thin ribbons of green light sliding over the newly clean sky. They weren't messages or music, just physics doing its slow dance. But watching them, I couldn't help feeling that the planet was, in its own way, content. And for the first time in a very long life of repairs and departures, so was I.
It started with a shimmer in the upper atmosphere, one of those thin, perfect lines that only orbital ships make. By the time the trail faded, the whole colony already knew someone important was visiting. No supply ship burned that much fuel to get here. 2 hours later, a sleek cruiser cut through the clouds and settled on the pad outside the Capitol dome. It looked out of place among our patched crawlers and rust-colored towers. Smooth hull, mirror finish, corporate logo etched in gold. Hallex Industries. I hadn't seen a Hallex vessel since my apprenticeship in the inner circles. Back then, their recruiters had called the Outer Rim a future investment opportunity. Apparently, the future had arrived. Commander Ishtara summoned me to the council atrium. She was already standing there with the visitor, a tall human woman in a graphite gray suit, perfect posture, the kind of person who carried her own gravity. Engineer Ryan Corin, Ishtara said. This is Envoy Cassia Venn, corporate liaison from Hallex Industries. Cassia extended a hand, all charm. Mr. Corin, your reputation precedes you. Restoring an entire atmosphere is no small achievement. I shook her hand, feeling the faint hum of a personal field shield. It wasn't just me. The planet did most of the work. Her smile tightened. So I've heard. Fascinating, really. A naturally adaptive biosphere that integrates foreign technology. Do you have any idea how valuable that is? Ishtara's antennae flicked. Virela is not for sale. Cassia didn't even glance at her. No one's selling, Commander. We're proposing partnership. Our scans show immense mineral reserves beneath your statomization network. We can extract them without harming the surface. I folded my arms. That's what every miner says before the first quake. She turned her smile on me again. You, of all people, should appreciate efficiency. We can fund expansion, new domes, medical stations, real infrastructure, a proper future for your family. She'd done her research. The mention of family hit like a soft punch. I appreciate the offer, I said carefully, but this world only just started breathing right. I'm not eager to jam another tube down its throat. Her eyes cooled. You're an engineer, Mr. Corin, not an ecologist. Let professionals handle resource management. Ishtara stepped forward. And let your corporation handle the profits. The envoy ignored her again. We'll present our proposal to the full council tomorrow.
I trust we can count on your technical endorsement." When she left, the air in the chambers seemed colder. I walked home through quiet streets. The domes were lit from inside, warm bubbles of light under the clearing sky. Mara was closing the cafe when I arrived. She could read my face before I spoke. "Who died?" she asked. "No one, yet." She handed me a mug without asking. "Start from the top." I told her about Helix, about Cassia Ven, about the promise of wealth, the risk, the pressure. When I finished, she leaned on the counter, eyes narrow. "So they fix things by breaking them more efficiently. Classic inner circle logic." "Yeah, they think they can dig without disturbing the network." "Can they?" I shook my head. "The biomatrix runs deep. Disturbing those layers could reset everything. All the stability, gone." Mara was silent for a moment. "You're going to fight them." "I have to." "Then you'd better be right." The next morning, the council dome was packed. Feigned elders, human settlers, traders, even off-world investors tuned in by holo. Cassia Ven stood in the center, with a holo display projecting models of drilling rigs shaped like delicate needles. Her voice carried the trained rhythm of a professional persuader. Helix Industries proposes limited subsurface extraction using resonant phase drills. No physical disruption, no contamination. In exchange, we offer infrastructure investment worth 2 billion credits. Hospitals, schools, a future worthy of this reborn world. Murmurs filled the chamber. Numbers that large have their own gravity. People lean toward them without realizing. Then Ishtara gestured for me to speak. I stepped to the platform, palms sweaty. "My sensors show that the planet's atmosphere is in equilibrium because of a self-regulating biological network. Any deep-core drilling could destabilize that system. We'd be gambling with our air supply." Cassia's expression stayed composed. "Engineer Corin speaks from admirable caution, but Helix technology has safeguarded dozens of colonies. None sitting on a living lattice. This isn't dead rock." Her voice hardened. "Fear of progress is the luxury of those already comfortable." "Fear of repeating our mistakes," I said. "Ask the worlds that mined themselves to death how much comfort they bought." The chamber went quiet. Ishtara's antenna lowered in subtle satisfaction. Cassia inclined her head slightly, conceding the moment, outwardly polite, inwardly plotting. "This is only the first proposal," she said smoothly. "I'll let your council deliberate." When she left the dais, I exhaled slowly. The silence that followed was heavy, uncertain. We had won the first round, but Helix never walked away after one meeting.
That evening, as storm clouds gathered again on the horizon, I sat on the balcony with Mara. Lyra slept inside. Kip crooled beside her like a living alarm system. Mara sipped her drink. "They'll try again." "I know. They'll offer more." "Probably." She studied me. "And if the council says yes?" I looked out at the flickering sky. "Then we'll have to decide how far we're willing to go to protect what we fixed." She nodded. "Home's always a fight, isn't it?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "But at least this one's worth fighting for." Helix didn't wait long to start tightening screws. By the end of the week, their drones were hovering outside the domes, projecting holo ads across the sky. Progress without risk. Slick videos showed imaginary towers, families smiling under perfect weather, credits raining down like confetti.
The colony had never seen that kind of propaganda up close. It glittered like temptation made of light. In the market, people whispered. 2 billion credits was enough to buy hope and erase memory. At the council dome, meetings stretched for hours. Merchants wanted the trade routes Helix promised. Miners wanted steady pay. Younger settlers wanted the dream of becoming the next inner circle hub. Even some fainted elders were swayed, citing controlled integration of external resources. When I stood to speak, I felt the room lean away from me before I opened my mouth. No one likes the man who tells them the prize is poisoned. After one particularly tense session, I found Rees waiting outside, arms crossed. He'd traded his uniform for dusty civvies, but he still looked like a soldier built out of iron rods. "You made yourself real popular in there," he said. "I've got a gift." "Ha ha, they just don't want another dry season. Everyone remembers hunger better than they remember science." "Yeah," I muttered. "And corporations remember profit better than either." Reese's grin faded. "Be careful, Rian. Helix has deep pockets and long knives. I used to guard one of their shipments back in the day. They don't lose politely."
That night, I couldn't sleep. Mara stirred beside me, but didn't wake. Kip's low mechanical breathing filled the silence. Outside the dome, lightning flickered on the horizon, the first storm since the planet stabilized. I got up and walked to the lab, lit only by monitor glow. The stabilizer readouts pulsed calmly, the planetary hum still steady beneath. I wondered what Varela thought, if thought was even the right word. For months we'd been in sync, machine and organism. Now, humans were about to jam a new rhythm into the song. I tapped the console, opened a secure channel, and sent a message to Ishtara. "We need to run seismic projections on any planned drill sites before the council vote. If Helix starts without clearance, we'll know where to shut them down." Her reply came minutes later. "Agreed." Quietly, our friends from Helix monitor public channels. Quietly was the only way we ever worked now. Over the following days, pressure mounted like weather before a storm. Helix envoys visited homes, offering scholarships, equipment upgrades, new filtration tech, all donations for goodwill. Their drones delivered pamphlets to every door. Even Lyra came home from school with one, folded in her pocket. "Mom said I should show you. It says they can make new gardens in parks." I took the pamphlet. Colorful renderings of shining domes, kids playing under clean skies. Nowhere did it mention that the ground beneath them would be hollowed out. "Looks nice, huh?" she said. I admitted, it does. But sometimes pretty pictures hide ugly holes. She frowned. "Why would people do that?" "Because holes make money," I said softly, "and money makes people forget." She nodded slowly, not understanding but pretending to. I tucked the pamphlet into my jacket pocket, like evidence. 2 days later, Ishtara called me to a private meeting. When I arrived, she was not alone. Beside her stood Elder Phainid Threx, the council's senior advisor, a being whose carapace was faded with age, like worn marble. "Engineer Corin," Threx said, voice creaking but firm. "You must understand our position. Trade routes are reopening. Helix offers security, power, prosperity. We cannot live in isolation forever." "Prosperity for who?" I asked. "Them or us?" "For both, if managed wisely." I shook my head. "They don't manage, they consume." Ishtara watched silently, her claws tapping together. Threx sighed. "Sometimes survival requires compromise." I met his many eyes.
I've spent my life fixing compromises. They always leak. When the meeting ended, Ishtara stopped me at the door. You will oppose the vote? Yes. You may lose. Probably. Her mandibles flexed, almost a smile. Then at least lose loudly. That evening, as wind built outside, Mara closed the cafe early. She found me on the balcony staring at the red flashes of Halleck's drones against the dark. You look like a man calculating the weight of a planet, she said. Feels about right. She handed me a cup of tea and sat beside me. You could walk away, you know. We have enough savings. Someone else can play hero. I took a slow sip. And if I do, Halleck's drills start next week. Everything we built burns in the long run. Mara looked out at the lightning. Then finish what you started, but come home after, for good. I will. I said. Kip barked once from the doorway, tail whirring like a small engine, as if sealing another family contract. By midnight, rain hammered the dome again. In the lab, seismic sensors began blinking red. Movement deep below the crust, not natural. I opened the feed. Halleck's drilling ships had already deployed to a test site without council approval. They weren't waiting for the vote. Of course not, I muttered. Why ask permission from ants when you own the hill? I grabbed my field kit and comlink. Time to wake some friends.
By the time I reached the western plateau, the storm was in full roar. Needles of rain slashed sideways, turning the night into a blur of blue static. Halleck's floodlights cut through the darkness, tall metal rigs pulsing with cold white glow. Their ships crouched on the plain like insects feeding from the earth. Tesk was already there, crouched behind a boulder, goggles fogged, rifle slung across his back. "About time, engineer," he hissed through the comm. "They started phase drilling 30 minutes ago." "Any council authorization?" He clicked in disgust. "They forged one. Sloppy job. Ishtara confirmed it's fake." Behind us, Rees and 2 security officers unpacked stabilizer disruptors, portable EMP emitters meant to shut down malfunctioning towers. Tonight they were going to be used on billion-credit mining rigs. I crouched beside the control crate, rain streaming from my hood. "If we disable them now, Halleck's will call it sabotage." Rees grinned, thunder flashing across his scarred face. "Only if they can prove we did it." I looked out at the rigs, humming low like beasts. The ground under my boots trembled faintly with each pulse. In the distance, lightning hit the plains, lighting up waves of soil that rolled like an animal's flank. The planet didn't like what was happening. We advanced under the cover of the storm, boots sinking in mud that shimmered with faint bioluminescence, Virella's blood. Each step closer, the hum from the drills deepened. It wasn't just sound, it was a vibration in my ribs, a steady heartbeat that wasn't mine. We reached the first rig. Its core glowed blue from within, the drill head a blur of spinning light. I hooked the disruptor into its access panel, fingers numb from rain. Code scrolled across my visor display. Phase alignment detected. Warning, network interference. "What kind of interference?" asked Tesk over comms. I frowned. "The biosphere's reacting. The planet's trying to push back." "Then hurry, human, before it decides we're the infection." I hit execute. The disruptor pulsed once. Then the rig went dark. Silence fell, heavy, unnatural. Then came the roar. A second rig exploded in sparks, its stabilizers overloading. The shockwave threw me into the mud. "Rees, report!" "Second site's gone critical. Looks like the bio-network overloaded their resonance field." Translation: Virella just defended itself. Cassia Ven's voice crackled over the open comm channel, calm but edged with fury. "Engineer Corrin, disengage immediately. You're interfering with authorized corporate operations."
I wiped rain from my visor. You were warned. The network isn't stable enough for deep core activity. Your models account for that. Your models are wrong. Lightning split the sky, illuminating her sleek command skimmer hovering above the rigs. Through the rain, I could see her face projected on my HUD, composed, calculating. You think this planet is alive, Mr. Corrin? It's a rock with a trick, and tricks can be replicated. Then go replicate somewhere else, I said. You're throwing away progress for sentiment. No, I said quietly, for balance. I cut the channel and jammed her signal. The storm intensified. Rees and Tesk were still working on the remaining rigs, sparks jumping with each pulse. Through the rain, I saw one of Halleck's drones pivot toward us, scanning beams slicing the dark. It spotted movement, fired. Tesk dove aside, shouting curses in 3 languages. Rees returned fire, hitting the drone's core. It spun, crashed, exploded in a plume of sparks. Nice shot, I muttered. I aim to misbehave, he said. The third and final rig was already faltering, overheating from internal resonance. The whole structure vibrated, whining like a dying animal. I sprinted to the console, ignoring the heat bleeding through my gloves. Error codes danced across the screen. Core unstable, imminent collapse. I had 2 options, trigger the disruptor and risk chain reaction, or let it burn and hope it didn't tear open the crust. Rian, Mara's voice came through faintly on comms. She must have patched into our secure channel. What are you doing out there? Sensors show massive seismic buildup. I'm stopping it, I said, voice breaking through static. Come back now! I stared at the console, lightning flashing around me, wind howling like the planet itself screaming. I thought of Lyra, of the cafe, of the sky finally clean, and I pressed execute. The rig exploded in a column of white fire that turned night into morning. Shockwaves rippled through the plane. I felt the earth move, not cracking, but flexing, like something exhaling after holding its breath too long. Then, silence. Smoke curled upward into the rain, glowing faintly blue where energy met atmosphere. The tremors faded. The planet settled. Tesk limped toward me, armor scorched, eyes blinking out of sync. You alive? Barely. Rees trudged up behind him, dragging a disabled Halleck's drone. They'll call this terror. I can call it what they want, I said, watching the smoke fade. The planet's alive, and now it stays that way. By dawn, the storm had passed. We stood on the ridge overlooking the valley, 3 figures coated in mud, watching as the first sunlight hit the field domes below. Steam rose from the ruined rigs, curling into soft spirals that looked for all the world like the planet was sighing in relief. Rees lit a cigarette, the ember flaring against the pale sky. So what now? Now, I said, we fix the mess. Again. Tesk chuckled, low and tired. Engineer never retires. Not until the machines behave, I said. Behind us, the colony's emergency sirens, finally, went silent. For once, that sound felt like peace.
Halleck's left within the week. Their ships rose like silver ghosts through the dawn, leaving behind black scars where their rigs had burned. Officially, they called it strategic withdrawal due to environmental instability. Unofficially, they'd realized something that the rest of us already knew. Varela wasn't a place to exploit. It was a place that resisted ownership. The Council broadcasted a formal statement declaring all corporate extraction rights void. Commander Ishtara stood before the colony and said simply, "This world has chosen survival. We will follow its example." Applause spread like a wave, rolling through the plaza until it became laughter, relief, tears. People hugged strangers. The storm was over. Not just the one in the sky, but the one that had hung over every heart. The next few days blurred into repairs and cleanup. Rees oversaw the dismantling of the damaged rigs. Tesk's team scavenged parts to rebuild sensor grids. Everywhere I looked, people were working, not because anyone ordered them to, but because they wanted to. There was pride in every weld, every patch, every beam raised toward the sun. When I walked into the cafe, Mara had painted the front wall a warm gold, like the light at sunrise. Lyra was at the counter, helping her wipe glasses. Kip sprawled across the floor in his usual half-charging, half-sleeping pose. Mara looked up. "You're late for breakfast, hero." "Don't call me that," though I couldn't hide the grin. "How's business?" She nodded toward a small line forming outside. "Apparently, saving the planet is good for sales. Who knew?" "Guess I should have done it sooner." She reached out, took my hand across the counter. "Don't you dare." That evening, the colony held a small ceremony. Not grand, not political, just people standing under clear skies, holding lights that flickered softly like stars. Ishtara said a few words about renewal, about balance, about learning to listen to the silence between storms. Then she turned to me. "Engineer Karan, you have taught us that survival is not conquest, it is cooperation. May this world remember that, even when we forget." I wanted to answer, but words felt too small. So I just nodded. Lyra tugged my sleeve. "Dad, look!" Above us, auroras unfurled again, green and silver ribbons flowing across the night like slow-moving rivers. But this time, they weren't ominous. They were beautiful. I watched the light dance across her face and for once didn't think about what caused it or whether it would last. Some things didn't need an engineer's explanation. Months passed. Seasons on Varela were still unpredictable, but gentler now. Mild rains, long dusks, slow mornings heavy with dew. Crops grew taller than before. Even the local fauna began to return to the valleys. The air smelled of iron and fruit, and the faint tang of ozone, life reclaiming itself. Our work shifted from survival to creation. I led a small group of volunteers designing a new stabilization system, not mechanical control, but symbiosis. We built lattice towers modeled after the planet's own bio-network, using organic alloys that could breathe with the environment instead of suppressing it. For once, our machines didn't fight nature. They listened. Tesks called it lazy engineering. I called it finally learning. One afternoon, while adjusting a tower sensor, I noticed Lyra in the distance helping Mara plant a new garden behind the cafe. The garden shimmered, rows of hybrid plants we'd grown from Virelin and earth seeds, glowing faintly under the twin suns. I waved, and she waved back, her laughter carrying through the warm air. That single sound, her laughter, was worth every storm, every scar, every sleepless night. Rees joined me on the ridge, chewing on a stalk of dried grain. "You ever think we'd make it this far?" "Not really." He nodded at the horizon. "Ishtar is talking about opening trade again. Small, independent, no corpse." "Good. Let them come and learn what balance looks like." "You sound like an old philosopher." "Occupational hazard. Think you'll ever go back to the inner circles?" I looked at the shimmering city below, the golden fields, the faint hum of the living planet under our feet. "Nah. Everything I need's right here." Rees smiled, clapped my shoulder. "Didn't figure you for the settling type." Neither did I. That night I sat on the balcony with Mara, watching the moons rise. Kip snored softly by our feet. Lyra slept inside, schoolbooks scattered across the couch. The hum of the stabilizers blended with the soft natural rhythm of the wind. Mara leaned against me. "Feels quiet." "Good quiet," I said. She nodded. "You ever miss the chaos?" I thought about it. Sometimes. But I think I finally understand it. Chaos is what happens when you don't listen. The planet tried to tell us all along. And we finally heard. Yeah. Then maybe we deserve the quiet. A year later, the colony had changed. Where once there were patched domes, now stood open plazas. Where once we rationed air, now children ran outside under filtered skies. The word terraformer had taken on a new meaning, not conqueror, but caretaker. The council voted to rename the settlement officially. No longer Outpost V9. Now it was Home Haven. I stood beside Ishtara as she raised the new flag, a simple white cloth with a spiral pattern representing the planet's harmonics. When the wind caught it, it fluttered softly, casting moving light across the crowd. Fitting name, Ishtara said. You brought us a haven. I shook my head. We built it together. Her antennae curved forward in what I'd come to recognize as a smile. Then may it endure. That evening, I climbed the ridge one last time. From there, I could see the entire valley, the domes, the fields, the rivers gleaming under moonlight. Every tower pulsed faintly in sync with the ground, mechanical hearts beating with organic rhythm. Kip trotted beside me, wagging his tail, occasionally stopping to chase flickering lights among the grass. When we reached the top, I sat on the rock and listened. There it was, that deep, steady hum, the same I'd first felt months ago. Not speech, not song, just life, steady and enduring. The planet wasn't talking to us. It was existing with us. And maybe that was the real harmony all along. Mara's voice came through the calm, soft and warm. Ryan, you coming home for dinner? On my way, I said. Just checking the view. Maybe we'll move next year, I teased. She laughed, the sound crackling softly through the calm. Maybe we already did. I looked once more at the horizon. Auroras shimmered faintly, chasing each other in lazy arcs. For a moment, the light reflected off the towers made it look like the stars themselves had descended to live among us. Home Haven. Not the center of the galaxy, just a small, forgotten edge where life had learned to listen, and a man had learned what home truly meant.